It's the Brian Lehrer Show on WNYC. I'm Amina Serna, filling in for Brian today. We keep hearing that AI is a young person's game, that it's the kids dragging their parents into the future. But writer Halle Newman is watching it happen the other way around. Her dad is obsessed with ChatGPT, and it's changing the relationship in ways she didn't expect. And it's not just Halle's dad. She found plenty of other ChatGPT-obsessed parents out there, what one TikTok user calls ChatGP dads, whose kids are watching with a mix of confusion, frustration, and genuine worry about what it means when mom or dad stops thinking things through on their own. Halle Newman joins us now. The headline for her piece in Slate is titled, "My Dad Used to Have All the Answers. Now He Asks ChatGPT." Halle, welcome to WNYC.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
So what was your dad like as an answer giver before ChatGPT came along?
Yeah, so my dad is somebody who I think like many people, for me, just always had all the answers. He's an incredible chef. He was amazing at teaching me how to cook. We would go hiking together. He could, point out exactly which mountains were each in like the mountain ranges in Vermont. He just really is just this big know-it-all, as many dads are. And as a kid, you roll your eyes and you're like, Dad, I already know that. I don't need to know that. And then last year kind of entered ChatGPT. And now he just loves looking everything up, even if he does sort of know the answer already. So, he'll be making a dish that he already knows how to do really well. And he'll kind of tweak it with ChatGPT to maybe figure out how to make it for more people or, just wanting to try something new with it. I can't really tell the difference in this case. But yeah, he's just been obsessed with kind of asking it everything, especially, now when I ask him for like advice for doing my taxes or advice for cooking something at home, he'll say, you should really ask ChatGPT. It's got great answers. And he's very enthusiastic about it.
Your piece isn't really an indictment of ChatGPT. You're not necessarily saying it gives bad answers, but instead that it's created more of a wedge between you and your dad. Can you say more about that?
Yeah. I think what's kind of core to that wedge is just this role reversal. I'm used to my dad telling me, get off your phone, Halle, when I was a teenager, kind of like teaching me how to use tools like Instagram and Snapchat safely. And now I feel like I'm the one that's kind of parenting and scolding. And I feel like it's almost like my job to be like, Dad, I want you to be more careful. This might not be the correct answer that you're getting on ChatGPT, and kind of just pushing him in that way. And then also I do crave that, original advice that I used to get that I'm perhaps not getting as often anymore. So I think that's been an interesting wedge that we've sort of navigated together.
Listeners, is there someone in your life who can't answer a question anymore without first running it by ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini? What kinds of questions are they outsourcing, and what's it like to be on the receiving end of that? Maybe you're the one who's gone all in on AI and you want to explain why it's actually pretty great. We want to hear from you. 212-433-WNYC. It's 212-433-9692. Call or text. Is there something generational at play here? Because the cliche we usually hear is that it's the kids who adopt new technology and the parents who resist it. Your dad and a lot of other parents, it sounds like, flip that script, right?
Yeah, definitely. I think there's definitely something generational, and I think this is kind of a subset of Gen Xers. There's a Pew Research Center study that came out last year that found that, about 60% of people 30 and under report using ChatGPT, while only 25% of people between 50 and 64 report using it. So, we know that it's not as common, but what I found through this article is that the Gen Xers, like my dad, who are using ChatGPT, they're using it in a different way, and they have this very endearing sense of wonder for it. They're constantly like, can you believe that it can do this? And I think it's because they didn't grow up with these world-altering technologies. Like, I am really used to Google. I've always had knowledge at my fingertips. I can recognize that ChatGPT and LLMs are impressive, But, it seemed like the logical next step for me, and it's not surprising to me that it can do these things in the way that I think it's surprising to my dad and other people in his generation.
So you talked to a cyber psychologist for this piece who said
Yes.
that Gen X has a kind of uncritical, maybe unreflective relationship with new technology. That sounds kind of like a burn. But do you buy that? And if so, why do you think that is?
I definitely buy that. I mean, I remember lessons in school about like the Pacific Northwest tree octopus and how not everything that you see online is real. So I've kind of been taught from a young age, and while my brain was developing, to kind of question what I'm seeing online and to question the tools of technology, at my hands. I grew up with movies like WALL-E, and my parents grew up with Star Wars. And so I think there's more of like an optimistic lens for them, where with my generation, and perhaps for millennials too, we're kind of approaching it not with a complete sense of doom and gloom, but definitely with more cynicism, skepticism, and kind of a sense of like healthy apprehension.
Some of the kids you interviewed were genuinely worried, not just annoyed. One teenager said watching her dad use ChatGPT for everything made her question his critical thinking. Is that where this goes if it continues?
I don't know. I mean, I think there's kind of a line between being annoyed, where I think I maybe fall more with my dad and, genuinely worrying about their critical thinking skills. But I did see a lot of people, on Reddit threads and on TikTok comment threads saying that they did genuinely worry about their parents, and that there wasn't always that parents weren't necessarily always able to recognize, okay, this thing isn't real, or it's not giving me, information, or the information that it's giving me maybe not be something that I can 100% trust. And so I think that, I heard echoes of what those teenagers were saying and other things that I saw online of people feeling genuinely worried. And I think that's important. When I was talking to Elaine Casket, who is a cyber psychologist I spoke to for this piece, she kind of talked about the importance of checking in with your parents and saying, in the least condescending way possible, I'm kind of worried about your usage. Can we talk about it? Just to kind of perhaps interrupt that pattern.
Halle, I want to read you a pro and a con text. One person writes, I love this conversation. My husband used ChatGPT the other day to justify his argument in a fight between us. It was obnoxious. So that's sort of the con. And here's a pro. My 77-year-old husband used ChatGPT this morning to compare ingredients in our separate protein powders. I was shocked since I'm 10 years younger and I don't go near it. This person's laughing out loud, they say. So, I mean, it works sometimes if it supports the argument. I guess maybe not so much if it's coming across as obnoxious, right?
Definitely. Yeah, I think there are definitely pros and cons, and in this situation, there's a lot of gray area.
Let's take a quick call. Bryce in Queens, you're on WNYC, and I apologize, we don't have a lot of time for you, just 30 seconds.
Hi. So, one of the things that my clients have started doing, I'm a lawyer, and they've started pushing back anytime I send a draft document to them or something, and sending back, huge amounts of comments from AI, 19, 20-page documents full of often fake cases that they've cited. And what, some of them don't appreciate is how much work it takes to go through all of these cases that they cite and look them up and try to figure out if they actually exist or not, because we as attorneys can be sanctioned if we submit fake cases. And,
right.
I've cautioned many of my clients, like, there are many positives to using this, this software, but one of the negatives is just the proliferation of work that it causes for attorneys when you do that.
Bryce, thank you so much for your call. Halle, do you get into the piece at all about just how this is affecting work relationships?
Not as much in this piece. That's perhaps the next article. But I do think it's really interesting. People do use it for work. A lot of the parents that I spoke to for this piece use it for work. And so, yeah, I think it's worth having some cynicism and skepticism there too.
We'll leave it there for today. You can read Halle Newman's piece, My Dad Used to Have All the Answers. Now He Asks ChatGPT. That's on Slate. Halle, thanks so much for taking the time and talking about it with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.